Aloha and welcome to my podcast. I decided to do this project podcast style just so I could have a casual discussion on the topic that I chose. And the topic I wanted to talk about was culture within the Mormon dating circle. And specifically, I wanted to talk about how gender and race plays a role in that. So I've grown up in the LDS church. I've gone to church schools. I've gone to both BYU Idaho and BYU Hawaii, and I am in the Mormon dating circle. So these are all just based off of my observations from being a part of the culture. So first off, I wanted to address how gender and race are cultures within Mormon dating culture, just because that can be a little confusing. But basically, culture is a learned knowledge, belief, or custom, just a way of thinking that we pick up through our surroundings and how we are raised. And I think the key word here is learned, because we're not born with it. It's something that we pick up over time, and everybody has different cultures. It makes everybody different. So members of the LDS church have their own culture because of the specific way that we act, think, talk, and behave due to our learned observations that we've made through being around people of that culture. So starting with gender, gender is its own culture within this because women and men have their own separate cultures, and you can only really know women culture through being a woman and being a part of it, and you can only truly know men culture from being a man and being a part of that culture. Obviously, as a woman, I can observe men culture and I can try to understand it from my own perspective, and same for men to woman culture, but I will never fully be able to understand men culture because I'm not a man and I haven't experienced it from his perspective. And I think we can all acknowledge that women and men culture have their distinct differences. And then race also has its own distinct culture, and that has to do more with ethnicities and how that affects your upbringing and your personal beliefs and your way of thinking, because all races have differences about them due to their own learned observations. So there are many different subcultures within Mormon culture, but I'm just going to be focusing on those two specifically. So going back to gender, these are all from my observation. I can't speak for everybody, but from what I've observed, I have observed gender to play a more traditional role in relationships, in that being that men are typically the head of the household. They usually work hard to provide for their family, and women typically are stay-at-home moms and really good homemakers. Now, I know this is a very stereotypical idea of Mormon relationships, and not all Mormon relationships look like this. However, from what I have observed and experienced, this is typically what they look like, or what they're kind of expected to look like, even though they don't always all look like that. And you can kind of start to notice this starting in the dating stage. So right now I'm in the middle of the dating stage, and I've experienced it at BYU and at home in YSA wards and stuff. And since the church encourages people to date lots of people while you're young and to get married young, the dating scene is pretty active. And a lot of the times it can feel like everybody's just out there searching for their potential spouse, which can be a little intimidating sometimes. So like I've mentioned, gender can play a pretty traditional role from my observations, as men are the head of the house and women take care of the kids in the home. From what I've observed, it's not uncommon for girls, especially at BYU, to mainly be there to find their husband. People like to joke around that women are just there to get their MRS degree. And when I was at BYU Idaho specifically, I actually did meet a lot of girls who would straight up tell me that they were there just to find their husband and then drop out. And this took me by surprise, because I genuinely thought that was a stereotype, and I didn't think that girls actually thought that way, but it is true. And learning more about this, I think that this comes from our traditional idea we have on relationships. And I think that can cause women to, not that they don't value degrees, but their main priority at that age is just to find a husband and to fulfill that womanly role of becoming a mother. And that doesn't require any schooling. And so that can just not take a main priority for women. So therefore, school is just kind of more of a stepping stone to become that womanly role and that mother. Obviously, not all women drop out of school as soon as they find someone they want to marry. A lot of girls do finish their degrees. And from what I've noticed though, even if girls do finish their degrees, a lot of times they don't really have an intent to use it or use it for a long time because their main goal is still to be a stay-at-home mom. And it's kind of more of a backup plan in case they ever do need to use their degree. But I mean, all women are different and not all LDS women take this traditional gender route. I've also seen examples of women who have had a career as well as being a mom. And I think both are great options, and it doesn't mean one is better than the other. However, I still do believe that there are gender expectations within Mormon culture that a woman will take care of the kids and the home. That's just kind of an expectation put on women within the culture. I've known lots of women in my life, my mom included, who took this traditional role of being a stay-at-home mom, and either they didn't get degrees or they never used their degrees because they were focused on raising kids, which I think is a great thing to do. However, like as my mom, for example, has gotten older and all of her kids have gotten older, she's expressed that she feels unfulfilled now, and she just like yearns to find her place in life and to find a career she's passionate about and just to figure all that out. But a lot of times she'll express that it feels too late for her and it's just like overwhelming because she didn't do that when she was younger. And I don't believe that it's too late for her, but she has expressed that she feels like she never like took those opportunities when she was younger because she was so focused on becoming a mom. But on the other side, I have known lots of women who are completely fulfilled being a stay-at-home mom, and that's great for them. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way, but I do believe that we should still recognize that not all women are going to be fulfilled in the same way. So that's just something to think about. So now going on to race, this is something that I've observed playing a role in Mormon relationships, especially at BYU Hawaii. I mean, here there's a very diverse selection of races and ethnicities within the dating pool. Students come from all over the world and we're mixed together on one campus, so that just adds an extra aspect within Mormon cultural dating. My main observation since being here is that most people date within their own culture, and obviously people branch out and they're friends with other races and cultures, but dating wise, they usually stick to the people within their culture. And there are exceptions and not everybody does this, but I would say the majority of people that I've seen do this. And I think people stick to their own cultures and races because it's what they know and what they're familiar with. Dating someone from another racial or cultural background can be done, but it adds a lot of complications just because there's so many differences between cultures, and it can complicate relationships since you don't always understand their specific cultural expectations and what they're used to in relationships, since all cultures are different. And for example, if one person comes from an individualist culture and the other one comes from a collectivist culture, they're going to run into issues because someone might be used to being more independent, while another person's used to like seeking approval from their family and their community. So it can just cause people to not be able to see eye to eye in some situations. However, I think intercultural relationships are great, and I think that they can work and they can be done. I've seen them done in my own life, but I think it takes a lot of communication and being open with each other, and it requires like making sacrifices so that you guys can blend both cultures and make them work together. So dating within the Mormon culture can be tricky to navigate. There's different cultures within the Mormon culture that you have to take into consideration when deciding who you want to be in a relationship with. I think it's important to understand how gender plays a role in these relationships and your place in them, and just to be really open and communicate. I think if you're a woman and you want to have a career and be a mom, to communicate that, because there are specific expectations that you will be a stay-at-home mom. And I don't think that's always how it has to play out, and that's not how it always does. But I just think it's important to openly communicate your intentions and how you want the relationship to go, and so that everybody's on the same page. And I also think when you're trying to date someone from a different race or different culture, that communication is key, and just having that open communication will help you be able to navigate those differences more easily. But yeah, those are just some of my observations and opinions on how culture and gender and race plays a role in Mormon relationships. So mahalo, and thank you for listening.